Hey there nation, welcome to the show. We help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and welcome to another edition of the Underhive Wars, our series of Necromunda battle reports. This is battle report number 2. We're still in the first cycle of our Peach Trees Turf War for our campaign for Necromunda, and this battle report is actually fought between two of my friends, Warlord Ace of his gang 911 from House Van Saar versus my other friend Brother Grimm of the Pelago Slam Kings of House Goliath. So last time we looked at this battle report series, we had the Iron Sights of the Orlocks versus my jury of the Chaos Caldor. So now we're moving on now to the second turn of our cycle, and these two gangs will now fight out to see exactly who will be dominant for this round as well. Pretty much these guys will be fighting off on a standoff scenario just like in the last previous battle report. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to put on some background music real quick, show you the photos of the gangs as well as their rosters. If you want to see exactly what each gang is packing for this battle report, feel free to pause and check it out. Let's make it happen. Alright ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and talk about the scenario rules for this one. This is a standoff scenario, so the objective for this one is that both gangs will fight it out until either one gang quits or bottles out, whatever happens happening first. The last gang left standing is the one who wins the scenario. Each time that you actually give your opponent an out of action roll, each of the different gang members, depending what kind of member they are, is worth a different amount of points. Leaders are worth 3 points, champions are worth 2, and every other class, including juvies as well as gangers, are all worth 1 point apiece. The gang with the highest point total ends up winning the scenario. For the rewards for this scenario, the winning side gets D3 times 10 credits added to their stash. Also, if they end up getting a new territory, they roll a D6. If they cause their opponent to battle out, they add 1 to the D6 roll. On a 4-up, they get a brand new piece of territory for their turf. Also, they get +2 reputation points for the winner, as well as 1 reputation point if they're fighting against each other for the very first time. And that will make up the scenario rules for this one. Alright, as you can see, my friends are fighting on a 4x4 table on this one. There's lots of different types of terrain. We got a gantry walkway that kind of zigzag across the entire center of the table. We got some empty office buildings, some chemical tanks, the metro terminal, of course. And as you can see, my buddy Brother Grimm, he's deployed on the near side of the table. My buddy Warlord Ace, he deployed his forces on the far side of the table. So let's go and talk about each of the individual deployment areas and talk about where all the kings are located at. Alright, starting with the Pelago Slam Kings, the deployment here on the right hand side of the table. As you can see, my buddy Brother Grimm set up his juvies right there on the right hand side. He's got his ganger Flesh Stick, who's armed with the Renderizer, taking point with his 2 Jews right behind him. On the left hand side there, you also got 2 more members. I believe one of them is armed with a combat pistol. It's a combination between a stub gun as well as a plasma pistol, and also one of his guys also carrying a rivet gun as well. So that makes up my friend's right hand flank. Alright, make up his center deployment. He's got his leader Blitzkrieg Bob, as well as 2 of his other members of his gangs. I believe that's Porter as well as Gage. Those 2 guys are armed with stub cannons, and they're located right behind that little pile of rubble there, right in the middle of the table. And that makes up my buddy Brother Grimm's deployment area for this one. Alright, up next we have my buddy Warlord Ace. This is the deployment for his 911 gang for House Van Saar. Over on the left hand side there, you can see he's got like a little juvie squad going on. He's got 2 of his Jews are armed with stub guns on the left hand side, followed by, I believe that guy's name is Moloko. That's the ganger who's armed with a gang champion who's armed with a flamer, I believe. So that makes up his assault squad there on the left hand side. And on the center line, right behind the West Super Red inside the location there, we took the picture from the back so that way you guys can see it better, because we had some really bad backlighting on the last photo. He's got 2 of his gang members. I believe those are 2 gangers who are armed with bolt guns, I believe, and then right behind him is Bussin' 9, his leader, so that way you can activate those guys as a group when the activation phase starts. And finally, in the ruined building of the MCI Chemical Works tank farm there, you have 2 of his guys. I believe that one of them is the champion. I think that guy's name is Chopper. He's armed with a heavy stubber. On the left-hand side, you got Tough Shakes. That's his ganger, armed with a bolt pistol as well as a sword. So pretty much got his forces kind of spread out in kind of like a line formation on this one. Alright, so with deployment over, we go to the top of turn number 1. 9/11 gets the priority on this part, and the very first thing that my buddy Warlord Ace does, he taps his leader, activates that gang, his gang leader, as well as all of his men. I believe he uses what's called the Overseer ability. The Overseer ability lets you choose a member of your gang within 12 inches, and that person can do 2 sets of actions, as if it was like twice their turn in one kind of activation phase. So the very first thing he does, he sends up one of his gangers armed with a bolt gun to the base of that gantry walkway there, and for the other gang member, he activates that guy with the Overseer abilities. That guy uses a series of double moves to go up to the very top of the gantry walkway, so that way he has like a good little overwatch position, so that way he can shoot. Because the Overseer skill counts as a double action, his gang leader just kind of stays where he's at, located in the West Super Red. Over on Brother Grimm's side of the table, as you can see, he activates his gang leader, activating 2 more of his gang members as well as using him as a group. He sends Blitzkrieg Bob over to the left-hand side to the gantry walkway, kind of that little I-beam there, so that way he can take cover there. Also put on some long-range fire with the grenade launcher. He also sends up both Porter and Gage, his 2 gangers armed with stub cannons, up to the base of that gantry walkway, so that way they can spend the next turn climbing up and start engaging the members of 9/11. Next, my buddy Warlord Ace activates his gang champion Chopper. That's the heavy who's armed with a heavy stubber. He moves up both Tough Shakes as well as Chopper. He moves them with a double movement over to the base of that gantry walkway there, right behind that rubble pile, so that way they're in a good kind of overwatch position to take on his buddy, my buddy Brother Grimm's Juvie squad that's kind of making their way here on the left-hand side of the table. And in the center table, Brother Grimm activates Grizz. That's his champion armed with the rivet gun. He and the guy, I believe that guy's name is, I don't remember the guy's name on the top of the head, but he takes the other gangers armed with a combat pistol, and together they both double move up to that center rubble pile as well, heading towards the left-hand flank of the battlefield to engage Warlord Ace's Juvie squad there on the left-hand side. While that's happening, Warlord Ace activates Moloko, his second gang champion. He moves his gang champion over to the left-hand side behind that series of makeshift barricades on the left-hand side, taking cover behind that corrugated steel. And then he sends his 2 Juvies over to the right-hand side to kind of get like this, kind of like pincer type of build movement, so that way they can engage the Pelago Slant Kings as they come running through this part of the sectors and get them in a crossfire. So with 9/11 having no more models to move, the rest of the turn is dedicated to Brother Grimm. As you can see, he moves up his flesh stick as well as his 2 Juvies. He moves up to normally 5 inches, so that way all 3 of these guys can open up their pistols on both Chopper as well as Tough Shake, so they shoot their stub guns next. Unfortunately for Brother Grimm, only one of his shots do manage to hit Chopper, the champion armed with the heavy stubber, but it doesn't wound him, so that guy is just pinned. So on the next turn for regardless of whoever gets the priority on that part, he'll be able to stand back up again and burn one of his basic actions in order to do that. Alright, so with no need for end phase, we go directly to turn number 2, and 9/11 manages to steal the priority on this one again. So as you can see in this photo, Chopper, he gets right back on his feet again, using one of his basic actions to escape pinning real quick, so that way him and Tough Shake can both engage those Juvies on the left-hand side. However, between the 2 shots between both Tough Shakes as well as Chopper, the only thing they're able to do is put a flesh wound onto Flesh Stick, which is kind of funny. So basically his toughness goes down by 1 more. So he's easier to wound, however, that guy's still going because, as we all know, Goliaths have toughness of 4 in this version of Necromunda, so this guy's got 3 more flesh wounds to go before he gets used up at that point. So this game is also kind of interesting because it kind of shows you the power that the Goliaths have in terms of how strong and tough they are in this edition of Necromunda. So it's pretty cool and pretty neat to see that on the battlefield. Carrying on with the action phase, as you can see, Brother Grimm activates Blitzkrieg Bob as well as a little group of gangers are with him. Blitzkrieg Bob kind of shifts his position a little bit to the right-hand side, so that way he can open up with his grenade launcher upon Moloko as well as the Juvies there on the left-hand side. He also sends up his 2 gangers, Porter and Gage, up to the gantry walkway and moves in position so that way they can start shooting with their stub cannons as well. This butcher basically shows Blitzkrieg Bob opening up with his grenade launcher, firing a frag grenade right into the middle of those Juvies there, and if those guys were actually a short distance towards Blitzkrieg Bob than Moloko was. So because that template landed right in the middle of the 2 of them, catching them both in frag grenade shrapnel, so that part was pretty awesome. Unfortunately for Warlord Ace, though, he did lose one of his Juvies. Not lose one of his Juvies. One of his Juvies, though, goes down. He's seriously injured, so he'll have to roll up at the end phase to see if that guy goes out of action or not. At the same time, one of his Juvies didn't get wounded, so because that he's pinned. Now, if you notice, these guys are kind of scooted back an inch as well. That's because the grenade launcher for frag grenades has knockback rules, which means that if you get hit with the item, even if you don't get killed or not, pushes you back 1 inch automatically, which makes it pretty devastating. Which makes this combat system kind of devastating, especially if you have guys walking around on 2nd and 3rd level of flooring of the different urban terrain that you have, because that means guys could actually get pushed off the edge of a gantry walkway or out of a window or something and then, plummet to their death, which just kind of shows you how cool these rules are for this new edition. And a perfect example of that rule can be seen here in this photograph. As you can see, I believe the guy's name is Soljax, I believe is his name. As you can see, he got shot off the top of the gantry walkway. I believe it was Porter, the ganger who was armed with a stub cannon that managed to hit as well as to wound this guy as well. Because the cannon has a knockback ability as well, this guy failed his initial check. He fell off the edge and landed plummeting right down to his ill fate right there on the bottom of the ground there, all the way from the top of that gantry walkway. Luckily for Warlord Ace, though, Tugs does pass his panic check, so he just leaves slow checks there laying on the ground. He does activate his leader and decides to use the Overseer ability once again onto his Tugs, I believe the name of the ganger. So for the very first action, he sends Tugs standing up and climbing up to the top of the gantry walkway there on the second level, the first level of that catwalk. And then he uses another one of his actions in order to take aim with his bolt gun and open fire onto Porter. And not only does Tugs manage to hit Porter, he also wounds him as well. He gives him a serious injury roll on that part. So because of that, my buddy Warlord, my buddy Brother Grimm, will have to roll up on the CO in the end phase, whether he's out of action or continues to have a serious injury, or if things are looking pretty good, gives him a flesh wound as well. And because Tugs being tapped with the Overseer ability, he gets another set of actions again. So you can see in this photo, Tugs does move up closer in order to get engaged with contact with Gage, which is the ganger that's located in the background there. And then he spends another action to open up with that guy with his bolt gun against Gage as well to try to shoot him. Not only does Tugs manage to hit as well as wound Gage, Gage fails his initiative test as well because he's close to the edge there, and he basically falls back to and also takes a strength 4 hit on the way down hitting the ground as well. Unfortunately for my buddy Brother Grimm, that hit caused him to go out of action, so because of that, Gage will need to roll up on the serious injury table to see exactly what happens to him at the end of the battle report. So, reeling back from his very first out-of-action roll for the campaign, for the scenario, as you can see, Brother Grimm activates his champion as well as his as Ganger as well. He moves up his champion, runs him up all the way with the double move to the base of that gantry walkway, so that way he gets in range with the rivet gun. At the same time, he also moves up his Ganger armed with a combat pistol up to a little bit to the right-hand side between the two piles of rubble, so that way he gets a good line of sight against Tugs on that catwalk. And that while that occurs, my buddy Warlord Ace also activates his champion, moves him up with a double move towards the pile of rubble there, so that way he can start threatening the flank of the Pelago Slam Kings with his flamer. And because 9/11 has no more models to move at this point, as you can see in this picture, my buddy Brother Grimm decides to move up his Juvie squad as well. Fleshstake is taking point with his 2 Juvies falling right behind. They inch a little bit closer so that way they can get near those 2 gang members from 9/11, and so that way they can also start shooting at them as well. In the end, even with all the combined firing from all 3 gang members onto 9/11, the most they end up doing is causing a flesh wound onto Chopper. So that guy is, of course, a little bit easier to wound because now he's got toughness 2, but at the same time, though, the guy can still respond and still fight as well, and he still makes him a pretty powerful threat. So with the action phase over, we go directly to the end phase. We start making rolls for recoveries. As you can see in this photo, I believe the guy's name is FNG is his name. That's the juvie who got shot from the grenade launcher. As you can see on this roll, when he rolled up on to see if he would recover or not, Warlord Ace will have been out of action. So because of that, FNG will need to take a roll on the serious injury chart to see exactly what happens to him at the end of the battle report. Meanwhile, Soljax is still out on the ground with a serious injury. He's just basically bleeding out because he didn't manage to recover from his injuries yet. And to make matters worse for Brother Grimm, I believe that guy's name is Porter. He goes out of action as well when he rolls with recovery. So because of that, because 2 members of this gang has gone down, my buddy Brother Grimm has to take a roll to see if he bottles out. Luckily for him, though, Goliaths have a really good cool check, so that's worried about panicking out too much. So because of that, he does pass his bottle roll check, so the rest of his gang is still in the fight, and they're still hanging on for the rest of the action. So with all the action done, we go directly to the top of turn number 3. The Pelago Slam Kings manage to take priority on this part. As you can see here, the very first thing that my buddy Brother Grimm does is he activates his champion Grizz, as well as his secondary ganger armed with a combat pistol there. As you see, the very first thing he does, he moves up Grizz, uses a normal action to move to the top of the gantry walkway, getting ready to blast open with his rivet gun. And he also moves up just a normal type of movement for his ganger armed with a combat stubber, getting ready to shoot up at Tugs right there on the catwalk. And as you see in this photo, the shot for Tugs just went down. He shot both with his stub gun as well as his plasma pistol for his combo weapon, managed to inflict wounds on both of them, and it was the plasma gun shot that actually put this guy out of action. So because of that, my buddy Warlord Ace will need to roll up on the serious injury table for Tugs to see exactly what happens to him at the end of the battle report. And to make matters worse, as you can see in this photo, my buddy Warlord Ace decides to activate Chopper as well as Tough Shakes. Between the shots between Tough Shakes as well as Chopper, they managed to cause serious injuries onto Fleshstick as well as onto, I believe that's Hammert Boy, I think is his name of the guy. That's the Juvie's armed with the hammer as well as auto pistols. Both those guys are now laying on the ground seriously injured. Unfortunately for Warlord, for my brother Grim, Trip the Shrimp, who is his other Juvie, panics, and as you can see that in the background there, he's kind of fleeing away past the Alexander's department store because that guy just saw one or two of his buddies just get whacked with a heavy stubber, and he ain't having any part of that. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side of the table, Blitzkrieg Bob moves up his normal movement allowance to the top of this catwalk, takes aim with the grenade launcher with fire grenades, and opens up onto Moloko as well. Managing to hit the guy, hitting him with a strength 3 attack, so Moloko goes up into a ball of flame. Unfortunately for Brother Grimm, however, he was unable to wound Moloko, so because of that, the worst they did is push back Moloko an inch and also cause the guy to kind of get pinned, and all that's ever really do. So during this next activation phase, all he has to do is get a simple action to get back up on his feet again. Which takes this really cool picture for the activation phase. As you can see in this picture, both Moloko as well as, I believe that guy is Grim, is the name of the guy. He's the gang, Juvie's armed with twin stub guns. They both get activated. They also move up forward as well. I believe the Juvie moves up with a double movement to the back of that rubble pile, so he just spends the entire turn moving, while Moloko moves up his normal movement allowance and opens up with his heavy flamer up against Blitzkrieg Bob, as you can see in this photo there. So, pretty cool looking shot. Unfortunately for Blitzkrieg Bob, he does manage to get his wounds on this part, and I think he inflicts a flesh, yeah, that's what he does. He inflicts a flesh wound onto Blitzkrieg Bob, and unfortunately, because when he rolled to see if Blitzkrieg Bob would catch on fire with the Blaze special rules, he does. So now Blitzkrieg Bob is carrying both a flesh wound and he's on fire, and as the rules stipulate, what ends up happening is whenever a person's on fire, roll 2d6 and roll around direction to see exactly where the guy goes. And as you can see that little scattered at the bottom of the page, on the bottom of the screen there, Blitzkrieg Bob will be flying forward right off the edge of that catwalk. And because of the height, Blitzkrieg Bob falls off, takes a strength 4 hit, gets seriously injured on that part. When my buddy Brother Grim rolled to see exactly what ended up happening for his leader, you can see the dreaded skull of out of action. So because of that, Blitzkrieg Bob goes out of action, and he too will need to roll up on the serious injury table to see exactly what happens to him. And that, ladies and gentlemen, takes us directly to the end of the game. What ends up happening is my buddy Brother Grim voluntarily bottles out because so many of his gang members are kind of down and are in action. He doesn't want to risk losing any more guys to serious injury rolls, and that pretty much caused the end of the scenario to take place. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go directly to the post game and talk about exactly what happened to both the gangs at the end of this one. Alright, you guys, now it's time for the post-game. This is the post-game for Underhive Wars Battle Report number 2. This was a standoff scenario that was fought between 9/11 as well as the Pelago Slam Kings. In the end, this ended up being a victory for Warlord Aces 9/11 of House Van Saar. In the end, 9/11 managed to score 5 points by taking out a leader as well as 2 gangers, while the Pelago Slam Kings managed to take out 3 points by taking out 2 gangers as well as a Juve. So things are looking pretty good there for 9/11. Starting with the Pelago Slam Kings for the injuries. 3 members of the gang got injured. That's Blitzkrieg Bob, Porter, as well as Gage. Blitzkrieg Bob earned a grievous injury score, so because of that he goes into auto recovery, which means for the next battle report he will miss the next battle report because he's still recovering from his injuries. The same thing with Porter, he also suffers grievous injuries as well. Gage, on the other hand, suffers a head injury, so because of that he has a -1 to his weapon skill for the rest of the campaign unless something happens to where he kind of balances out. For advancements, because this is the very first scenario for both these gangs, the Pelago Slam Kings have no advancements, and in the aftermath, because they lost the battle, they earned 1 reputation point because they did fight against the they fought against the 9/11 for the very first time, but because they bottled out, they lost that reputation point, so now they're still at 0 points. For income, Grizz went out to work on the turf, earning a total of 70 credits for the gang. In the end, they used that money to hire a new ganger named the Headhunter. They armed that guy with the last gun as well. Their new record now is at 0 wins as well as 1 loss, and their new gang rank is at 1,070 points for this one. Up next for 9/11 for the injuries. 3 members of the gang got injured. We have Tugs, Souljax, as well as F&G. Tugs got an out cold roll, so he basically makes a full recovery. Souljax, however, suffers a grievous injury, so he will have to go into recovery. He will miss his next battle report because he's still recovering. Meanwhile, F&G gets humiliated, so because a -1 to his leadership as well as his cool, because the rest of his gang members are just mean that way. For advancements, because it was 9/11 very first scenario, they don't get any advancements. However, in the aftermath, they did win the battle, so because of that, they gained 1 unit of turf as well as 3 reputation points, putting them up in the top of the league so far. For their income, they managed to earn 20 credits from winning the scenario and worked their turf for about earning a total of 110 credits from their territory, which gave them a combined pool of 130 credits. At the merchant, they hired a new champion named Nero. They equipped him with a last gun as well as a last pistol, causing the gang's rating to increase by 130 credits. Their new record is at 1 win as well as 0 losses, and their new gang rank is at 1,130 points as well. That's going to do it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. As always, please check us out on Facebook, Google+, as well as Instagram for all the latest and greatest what's going on for our hobby. Please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable as always. We got one more set of battle reports being fought between the Killjoys of House Escher as well as the Sleeping Dogs of House Dalak to make up this first cycle, and then we'll move on to the second cycle of the scenarios as well. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we alternate every other Wednesday between Necromunda battle reports as well as our Mighty Empires campaign that are running at the same time. And also don't forget, on Mondays we have Age of Sigmar as well as Warhammer 40,000 battle reports. That's good to do for this one, you guys. You guys stay classy. We will catch you guys on the flip side. Peace out, ladies and gentlemen.